the TMA meeting. Says introductions. We're gonna go around the room.
Leo Gorman, Pasco MPO Executive Director.
Jack Mariano, Pasco MPO. Dr. Mullins, Hart.
Nick Lanson, Ford Pinellas.
Richie Floyd, Ford Pinellas, City Council Member for St. Petersburg.
Dave Eggers, Ford Pinellas, County Commissioner for Pinellas.
Johnny Wong, Staff Director for Hillsborough TPO.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy Ross, Chair of the Hillsborough TPO and Mayor of Temple.
Morning, Rick Slater, Hillsborough TPO and Executive Director of the Expressway Authority.
I'm Commissioner Starkey from Pasco County.
Brian Hunter with the Florida Department of Transportation.
Suzanne Ziegler with the Florida Department of Transportation.
Gal DOT District 7.
Okay, he stepped away. And let's go back over here.
Morning, Nick Uren, Pasco County Engineer.
Ed Fox, Florida DOT.
Katina Calabrese for Turnpike. Definitely Frank, and I'm with friends.
With whom?
Quest.
Okay.
Chris Shear, Pinellas County Commission.
Davina Elkin, Pasco County Transportation.
Michael Gangardi, City of St. Pete, City of St. Petersburg. Wade Carroll, Pond and Company.
Bob Esposito, Hernandez, Citrus MPO.
No Hillsborough. Okay, and online we have. You want to introduce?
Good morning. This is Scott Ferry with the Pasco County MPO.
Lynn Hertak with Tampa City Council.
Yeah.
Good morning, Gina Driscoll, St. Petersburg City Council and Ford Pinellas Chair.
I think I'll leave it to elected officials on that are on joining us electronically. Are there any other elected officials up there? Besides Lynn and Gina. Do we have a Hillsborough County Commissioner with us today?
Commissioner Bowles was supposed to be here. He's sick today.
So we have to vote on those two to participate and vote?
Okay.
Okay.
So our first motion would be to allow our two electronically participating members to be able to vote. We do have a quorum here present. I think that's part of the rules, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, you both can vote this morning. Our second job here is to start the process for election of a chair and a vice chair. So we will take nominations from the floor.
Move to elect David Eggers, Chair.
Second. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Or the screen?
Vertical or horizontal?
Okay, well, we don't even need to vote then. Commissioner Eggers, you're the chair and I'll hand over the rest of the meeting to you.
Thank you, and thank you all for allowing me to chair the next year. I guess the next order of business is to elect a vice chair.
Move to elect Catherine Starkey, Vice Chair.
Let me just, for clarification, is Catherine been the chair this past year?
Yes.
Yes. All right, I just want to make sure I'm clear, because in some ways, we kind of rotated through.
Yeah, and
That's usually we do.
but Commissioner Mariano, do you have the interest in being vice chair?
If you're doing it. But if you want me to, I'll.
Is anybody from Hillsborough County interested?
Well, Commissioner Bowles is not here.
Well, I think he means your representatives from the TMA.
Yeah, I meant from the three members that are anybody interested in serving as an officer. If not, just applying, just to make sure.
Hey, Ross.
Okay, well, I don't hear, so did the two Pasco commissioners duel it out and decide who the nomination was
It's
going to be?
not like he wanted to do it.
Jack wanted it? Okay.
No, he did it.
No, she's doing a good job. I'm happy with that.
I didn't mind.
You know what,
Chair, if we could clarify that we've also had multiple vice chairs over the years.
Yes,
So it's
yeah,
not
we'll-
limited
we'll-
to just one officer.
Yeah, we'll have a Hillsborough County vice chair as well. I mean, we've always had the three. No, nobody else from there.
But no one's here from Hillsborough.
So
Well, I am
I
here
would,
from
I
Well,
would,
that-
I would like to nominate Mayor Ross to be a vice chair as well.
Say, I will second.
Maybe you should make the motion.
Move from Mayor Ross to be
Okay,
vice chair.
and you'll second that.
Second.
Okay, so all in favor of those two vice chair nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. December meeting summary. Any questions about it before we approve that? Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Commissioner Eggers, do you mind if Chris comes up and sits at the table instead of
I
sitting
have
back
no
there?
issues at all with that. I was gonna ask that in just a minute, but we do have a voting member online, so we have three voting members, but
Thank you,
certainly
Commissioner,
having
for the invitation to the table. Appreciate it. Just where you want me?
Okay, that way I can keep an eye on it.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Scherer is on the Fort Pinellas board as well.
Yeah, so he'll, you know, I think participating would be fine, but I guess Gina, we allowed her to be the third voting person.
Yeah.
So, but Chris could.
But I appreciate any
Yeah,
commissioner who takes time
absolutely.
to come here, any elected official who takes the
Agreed.
time. to come.
Okay, any questions on the minutes or summary? Have a motion for approval, please?
Second.
All in favor?
We already have a.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Yes. Yeah. And we'll circle back to item 1, which is public comment.
Oh, yeah.
And is there anybody in the room that would like to take 3 minutes to speak to the board? Nobody. Okay. We'll get started. Sarah Caper, going to talk a little bit about the update on the status of our regional MPO. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Good morning, TMA. Sarah Caper, Hillsborough TPO, and I'll provide with you this morning a brief update on where we are with the regional MPO. So to start, at your last meeting, you asked us to provide FAQs on the website, and we have done that. So what you see here is the SCTPA website, and we have the page that was already existing on the proposed joined MPO. And if you look here, we have FAQs that anyone from the public is welcome to go explore, and we anticipate adding to these as we get more questions coming in. Another thing that we have worked on is on the same website. We have quarterly progress reports right here, and I'll show you an example of one. So every quarter, we'll develop a progress report on what was completed in the last quarter, what is ongoing, and what is upcoming. So you can see here the one from January, where we discussed that the scope of services was approved in December, that we were preparing the RFP package, working with FDOT, and that upcoming, we would be working on the RFP, the FAQs, and a presentation that we did earlier this year. And I'd also like to share with you that the RFP is live right now, so we're very limited in what we can do about that because it is open for proposals, but it is on the Plan Hillsborough website. And if we look here at the schedule, it was issued on February 12th, which is the same day that we approved the JPA. The Hillsborough TPO approved that with FTOP, so we have access to the funding. Questions are due next week, February 26th by noon, and all proposals are due on March 26th. This was sent to between 300 and 400 different email addresses. It's been posted on about 4 or 5 different posting boards for RFPs, and we're continuing to share information. It was just posted on social media, I believe, this week to encourage proposals to come in. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you have on the progress we've made right now on the regional MPO.
Yes, Mayor.
Sarah, is there a link to this FAQ page? Is there a link from our website, the Hillsborough TPO website, to that? Because a lot of people won't know what this, they won't know what the.
Sure. There's not one right now, but that's something that we're in the works on creating, and we will have that up shortly.
We'll do that for all three.
I was gonna say, we're gonna do that for, because nobody will know how to find it.
We also plan to put out some social media posts on that under the Ford Pinellas and respective MPOs. And, that'll get our followers, to at least engage as well.
Well, thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate that. I hope it gets a lot of traction.
I don't know if y'all can see the questions, but the questions that we put up there and tried to answer are a lot of the questions we've been hearing in this forum or at the joint Board of County Commissioners meeting. Is this going to eliminate any government agencies? Is this going to lead to increase in taxes? Why are we merging? What are the benefits of merging? We've tried to answer those. There's still some, unknowns out there for some of it. So we've answered it to the best of our ability. And I would say that as things evolve, we'll have updates on some of those answers as well. For instance, one of the questions is, how big would the board be? Well, right now, we think we've got some consensus. So we've put what the consensus was up there. That could change as we go forward.
If you could, when you start doing your social media portion of this, if you'd let everybody kind of know, maybe we can amplify this on our own platforms in our cities and push that out. I think, a lot of people in the individual cities, they won't know to go to this, but if we push it out, it might pique their interest and they'll get the link.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything? Yes, Mr. Mariano.
Yeah, so just going on the website, seeing it's not there, like I said, there's no access to it. How long before we can get the access to have a link on there to just be able to click on the FAQs? Should be, I would think, an easy thing.
It should be easy. I mean, I think we could do it today. Speaking of Ford Pinellas, I don't know about everybody else.
Pasco.
We can get it up probably within the week.
For the SCTPA?
It's up there today,
There
right?
now.
Yeah.
So if you
I look on the page, I click to the side.
If you go to the regional vision tab at the top and you hit proposed Tampa Bay Metropolitan Planning Organization, and you scroll about halfway down, it says, what is an MPO? It has more FAQs. And if you click on that, it takes you lower to the page where the FAQs are.
Gotta be an easier one.
We'll provide
Simple
it.
FAQ.
We'll provide it directly.
That brings up a thought I'm having. I have so many HOAs, maybe like you guys, in one little part of my district, I have 117 HOAs and civic associations, whatever. So I've organized a couple of my areas into what I call leadership councils, and I meet with them quarterly to go over things of interest in that area, and we bring staff to those meetings. Do we have like a one-pager that at places where we go to speak to the public, we can have available to give to people to really spread the message that this is occurring? And I tell you, one of the reasons why I'm thinking about this, one of our former legislative aides, who now works for TICO, went to Dallas with the Hillsborough Chamber. Were you on that trip?
No, but I know him.
Okay.
No, you're not.
And he, and they were, one of the things they were looking at was transportation. And he mentioned about this project right here, and not one person from the Hillsborough, I think it was the Tampa Chamber, I don't know what you call it. Tampa Bay Chamber knew this was going on. And those, are some of the leaders of that community. They had no idea we were talking about this effort. So I think we have to be a little more out there with our promotional products and get the word out. So I'd love to be able to go to this website and have some kind of one pager that I could print out and hand out at meetings and email out in my newsletter, etc.
Definitely, we can work on that.
I think it's a great idea. We get so wrapped up in it, sometimes we think everybody else knows what's going on.
And they
And we
don't.
find out that we're just kind of in our own small world doing that. And to that end, I've reached out to, I'm reaching out to several, but of Councilwoman Hurtak's colleagues, just to understand Hillsborough County perspective, but that's not the residents, but still, I think reaching out to folks and partners and to your point, residents and chamber leaders and, community leaders is really important.
Yeah, I mean,
To
they,
get-
they were all saying, we need something like this, and then, and he said, well, they're working on it, and they said, what? We've not heard one thing about it.
Yeah, and business, as I keep telling, businesses and education, they don't care about they
Yeah.
want the regional perspective all the time. So, yeah, a great point.
And I'm sure it's the same in my county with a lot of my constituents, they have no idea
Yeah.
that this is occurring. I'm not leaving that to just Hillsborough.
That Whit, Nia, and I have been invited to meet with Demetra Simmons. She's leading the Tampa Bay partnership.
Yeah.
To discuss how the business community feels about the merger and keep them engaged. So they have been, at least the business community across the region has been pretty actively involved in monitoring the progress of this initiative. Whit, Nia, and I also had an opportunity to speak to the Senate Transportation Committee last week. And on the topic of engagement, Senator Collins offered to work with us to host a series of, well, he called them town hall style meetings to engage the public outside of the traditional list of stakeholders and partner organizations that we work with on a recurring basis. My interpretation was that he wants to to gauge the temperature of folks on the street. And so he offered to participate in those alongside BOCC members and city council reps from across the region. So we're going to be working with his office to figure out what the format and scheduling of those looks like.
I think that's great, and whether it's your chambers, our chambers, we have like a gazillion chambers, a gazillion in Pinellas County that I'm sure also are not up to speed on it. So we'll make sure that we start getting that grassroots support. Greg.
Yeah, just one point and then maybe one question for the team. First, the policy committee of that Tampa Bay Chamber identified this as one of the 5 issues for them to track. So they haven't made their presentation to the general membership yet, so that should happen. It will just be, but one other question for probably Sarah and the 3 TPO executive directors. Are you hearing anything on the federal front that could influence our ability or inability to do this? I know they're freezing some of the tip actions and things like that, and so I didn't know whether there were a lot of things happening.
It's a mystery. I mean, I think we could speculate. And I don't want to speculate, but there's just a lot of uncertainty, and I don't yet see anything in say executive orders or agency edicts that would prevent us from merging or inhibit our ability to continue this conversation. What it probably will do is change how dollars flow and what we have to do to receive those dollars. But I have yet seen anything getting into the depths of how MPOs function and MPOs operate, but it might just be a matter of time.
Okay.
So, I would say right now, all bets are off.
Just knowing the roots are on the federal regulation side, they're just.
Yeah.
We'll be aware of that.
Yeah, and how those monies flow, we'll learn, but I think the spirit here is to unite to potentially gain more revenue for the area, but also perhaps consolidate some of our expenses as well, which I don't think is contra to what's going on, but anyway, for what that's worth. Commissioner Mariano?
Yeah, is anyone going to NACO coming up? For the legislative?
Chris is coming.
Who's going? Good.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to join with us, we're trying to get a meeting set up with transportation to try to talk about our issues, but I'd love to have some joint memberships join us to go through that. We've got a really good federal lobbyist, really tight with the White House so that we can have some influence, but I would love to see the group coming together. If anybody wants to join with us in that meeting, we can both.
I think Commissioner Peters is going. Is Commissioner Scott?
You're going, I'm not sure about Commissioner Scott, but I know those 2 folks from our council.
Yeah, so please join us.
I have a 3 p.m. on Monday, that's it. Whenever it is.
Okay. So our,
You guys, beach renourishment stuff? Yeah, and then this would be
Yeah.
important too.
we hired Ballard. So they're working on our appointments for us.
Yeah, just let me know when it is. I'll be happy to work in it.
I was gonna bring that up, Jack, so good for being there.
Any other questions? Phillips?
I didn't flip back.
Anybody else for,
If I could just ask, once you know when the appointment is, if you could let us know, we can try to make sure we have that flyer for you before you go.
Well, I want that, I think we all want it to be able to use in our daily,
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on it as soon as we can, but just if it happens.
well, it's next
sooner-
week. It's like
next week.
either March 5th, 4th. It's gonna be either 4th, 5th, or 6th.
Okay, we'll prioritize getting you a flyer then.
and I don't know how it's gonna be designed, but let's not have a page that has just that, like have a little, catchy something that lets people understand visually, like what we're really trying to accomplish here, along with some verbiage of your
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Chelsea's gonna talk about regional growth projections. Welcome, Chelsea.
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Waitman texted me that he is online now. So he's up there on the screen.
Did we get his approval, approve him to be a participant, or it's just the two?
We did.
Oh.
Yeah, we need to make a motion.
Okay, so moved. Second,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Seth, you can participate
And vote.
and vote. Okay. You guys will help me with the three that maybe, I don't know if they're waving their hand or whatever, so I don't miss them.
Who's
We're
running?
monitoring that.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
okay, thank you. Chelsea, go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to talk to you today about some of the growth projections that we developed as a region. So as you are aware, Tampa Bay is one of the most populated regions in the country and also one of the fastest growing. So as each of the MPOs and TPOs develops their long-range transportation plans every 5 years, one of the first exercises we undertake is to project how many people and jobs we intend to, or we can predict will be added to this area between now and 2050. And based on those growth projections, that's really the data that we use to help identify and prioritize the transportation projects that advance through the FDOT work program. On the employment side, there's a lot of numbers on these screens. I apologize for that. But all the presentations are available and will be posted to the website by the end of this meeting. Pasco County is projecting an increase of over 230,000 jobs between 2020 and 2050. Hillsborough is projecting an increase of 427,000 jobs, and Pinellas is projecting an increase of 77,000. So altogether, that's an increase of 741,000 jobs in our 3-county area. So going from about 1.7 million to about 2.5 million just in that time period alone. And this image here shows a little bit of that distribution. The image on the left is a heat map that shows total number of jobs in 2050. The darkest color is an area that has at least 1,500 jobs, and the lightest color is under 250, so you can see where those concentrations are. And then on the right-hand side, that just shows the increment of increase between 2020 and 2050. So that's where we're projecting the highest concentrations of new jobs are going to be added. And you can see how that distribution.
Yeah, what's sticking out in the water over there?
That is a zone that includes some submerged land. So it wasn't chopped that right at the line.
It's a new island.
On the population side, and I will note that these numbers are permanent population only. This does not include seasonal residents, and it does not include the millions and millions of tourists that we all have visiting us every year. Pasco County is looking to nearly double their population, adding 450,000 residents. Hillsborough is looking to add just under 560,000 residents, and Pinellas just over 100,000 residents. So region-wide, that's over 1.1 million people that could be coming to this region between now and 2050. And this is another example of how that shakes out. On the left is total density, and on the right is that increment of growth between now and 2050. And you can really see where a lot of that growth is projected to be happening. So just in summary, again, we're looking to add 740,000 more jobs, 1.1 million more residents, and not including the millions of visitors and seasonal residents that we already have. And the MPOs, as the 3 counties, we're going to continue to work together as we always have done to make sure that the projects that we're advancing are really going to help to meet those mobility needs of the people that will be coming to this region. That's just a quick primer. I'm happy to take some comments, but this is really going to set you up for the next item on the agenda, where we're going to talk about some of those major projects that are both coming online now, and maybe the planning projects for them are underway, that we're going to be advancing as a region to help meet these growth projections.
Just, you know, a couple, I don't know how long ago, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, we became the 3rd fastest growing county in the United States. We used to be like 5th. But something that we're really noticing in Pasco County, it's more in Jack's district, I would say, than mine, is Hernando County. Hernando, is really starting to pick up in their population, and they're all coming through ours to get down to yours. So at some point, it would be interesting to just add some of their numbers here, because they are commuting. They don't have the jobs in Hernando County. So they're commuting through us to Hillsborough and the Pinellas.
And that's a really great point. And I know Bob Esposito was here, the executive director from Hernando Citrus MPO, and they developed their projections at the same time that we all did. Maybe at an upcoming meeting, maybe even at the broader SCTPA, we can bring you the projections from the entire 7-county region and show you what that looks like.
Greg, I want to see, are these new projections? You know, because we see them frequently, but are these new projections?
These are the projections that were developed, I believe, 2023. We developed them in support of our 2050 long-range plans.
But yes, he's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chelsea, you almost answered my question, Greg. What's the source of this? Because I know I do, and I'm sure the rest of you do too. I go to get a lot of presentations that are very similar to this. And the numbers are fairly close, but they're not, I mean, the trends are the same, but what's the source of this?
So the source of this is basically the MPOs, and we take a few different steps to how we get to it. I know Bieber, the state of Florida, they put out some official projections that all of the MPOs look at and consider, but then we make some refinements to those projections. In Pinellas, we sit down with every single one of our local governments and we review their local plans. They tell us where they're seeing growth, where they predict growth. We look at oncoming development, all of that goes into the Pinellas projections. Hillsborough, I believe, takes a very similar approach where they don't just take one set of numbers and run with it. They do a lot of refinements based on their local knowledge of the area. I believe Pasco also does the same.
Correct. To your point, it doesn't change the overall direction that we're seeing.
No, the trends
of the specificities might be a little different, but
really the reason I ask is to, you know, are we duplicating this process across the board? And the point to that is not, I mean, I'd love to save you work, but are we spending taxpayer money to duplicate these same studies that, you know, all over the place? The Planning Commission's doing it, other people are doing it, and the trends are the same, but the numbers might be a little bit different here and there.
Yeah.
Do we really need to do this in silos?
So I would say that we don't do this in silos. From Hillsborough's perspective, the Planning Commission was involved in those numbers. And what we do is the numbers that we create as the MPO, those numbers are used by most of our local governments for their fire district planning, water sewer planning. So these numbers are bought in by all the different local governments, and there's no duplication. And we also believe that these numbers are a bit more refined than the overall projections you might get from a state agency, who typically will just look at a trend line. And they're not really looking at that trend line in different areas. So these are much more defined projections.
Thank you.
The Bureau of Economic and Business Research, or BEBR, they don't really account for redevelopment very well. So that's just kind of a weak spot in their analysis that we found. So that's why we go through that extra refinement. And we went through a first pass and then we sat down with the local governments and said, how does this look? Review it. And we had to pretty much across the board raise everything up a little bit because of what local governments were seeing. So it's that feedback that's really helpful. It may seem like there's a lot of numbers out there, but it's probably more that they're being refined and then they're presented as a final. These are considered adopted projections, and then they're officially readopted every 5 years as we prepare the next long-range transportation.
And that gives me a little comfort because when you were talking about how they were developed, I'm thinking, well, you know, we're looking at this here through a transportation lens, but like site locators who are looking to locate, you know, big job employment centers, if they're looking at different data than we're looking at because we've refined it, you know, we all need to be looking at the same thing. I mean, and this exists for the whole MSA too, which is bigger than the TMA region. So I just think it's important, and maybe we are, you gave me a little comfort there, but that we're all looking at the same thing so that the site seekers are looking at the same, you know.
So economic development, for instance,
Right.
in Pinellas, they
Right.
got this information.
Right, okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, and you know, I am certain, 100% certain that there are people out there coming up with different projections, but they're not official government projections locally in our region. These tend to be, and y'all can correct me, Tania and Johnny, if it's different in your county, but these tend to be sort of the true official projections.
Okay, thank you.
They feed the model, correct?
Pardon me?
They feed your model, correct?
They do,
Yeah.
that's right.
To your comment, I remember, I think it was a year and a half ago, when DOT was giving us a presentation on 54 and 41, they had to go back to the drawing board because we blew through our beaver numbers and they were.
We did the same in
We're low.
Pinellas, yeah, so we got into a bit of a controversy over our project in Clearwater because we had developed these projections and then we heard from the city, well, you didn't take into account the amphitheater that we just built. You know, but that's really granular stuff and it doesn't really change the dynamics of what's happening. So when you drill
For
down.
us, they had to redesign that intersection to handle more traffic.
Well, we found that we had already by 2019 exceeded our projections that we had done for 2045. You know, so in some areas.
But I think to the point about heavy growth in your area, I mean, that could be significant. In
Yeah.
our case, in
Now
this
we
case,
have
with
delay.
not much growth,
Right.
Yeah.
there's not gonna be a
Right.
whole lot of
Yeah.
adjustment.
Right. But it is important that we continue to keep a handle on this. And so it's an ongoing process.
To Mayor Ross's point about duplicative numbers, the Pasco MPO worked with the Planning Economic Growth Department while they were doing their comp plan to ensure that our numbers were in alignment. So there wasn't multiple numbers floating out there. And this is what Pasco MPO and the county will be using moving forward. So we made an effort, this LRTP as well, and these are the numbers that you're seeing up there.
Anything else on this? Chelsea, thank you for that presentation. Any other comments? We'll move on to the item 6, which is our regional projects. And I guess Chelsea, you're up first on US 19, so
Yep.
go right ahead.
I'll just make the agenda. I can make sure I stay up here. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the US 19 Regional Service Plan. So for those of you that have been around for a couple of years, you may remember a small organization called the Tampa Bay Regional Transit Authority. They of course disbanded in 2003, but in 2002, they completed a study that looked at some kind of express transit service in the US 19 corridor. This study evaluated station areas, a variety of alignments, and developed a preliminary concept of operations. Ultimately, the study recommended an express bus service in the corridor, coupled with 15 basic low investment transit stops, and they included some basic cost estimates for various levels of investments. However, that's where the study stopped, and then TBARTA was disbanded. We really found a lot of value in that first basic look at the US 19 corridor. So Ford Pinellas has been working with the Pasco MPO to see how we can advance the work that TBARTA did and bring this project a little bit closer to something that's actually implementable in the corridor. So the scope of the effort and the scope is about to, a notice to proceed should be issued next week for it. So we're really going to look at transit-oriented development opportunities within the proposed station areas that were identified by TBARTA. T-Bird identified 15 station areas. Actually, they started with a heck of a lot more than that. They got theirs down to 15. We'd like to do a deeper dive on 10 of those areas to really look how, if we were to implement an express bus service, how would those stops or station areas integrate within the planned redevelopment around in the areas? We don't just want to put an express transit stop on the side of the road without considering the redevelopment that's going to be happening around it. So we're going to be doing a market-based evaluation of the redevelopment potential of each of those sites. And then we're going to create some renderings to visualize how the station areas and the redevelopment could look and work together. This is also going to include a look at sidewalk connectivity to the sites, roadway connectivity to the sites, and even bicycle connectivity. And then we're going to develop a service operating plan to consider how the service would operate within that corridor. Now, the US 19 North Corridor, at least in northern Pinellas County, is undergoing some transformation, and there's some discussion as to what that transformation will look like in the future in terms of interchanges or a viaduct roadway. So what we want to do is make sure that as we're moving forward, identifying that vision for US 19, that the transit that we're planning for the corridor is still going to be able to work with it. So that'll be part of this exercise as well. In terms of stakeholders, with this project, we'll be working very closely with our partners at Florida Department of Transportation, PSTA, and Go Pasco. Of course, the Pasco MPO, they've been right there along with us, developing the scope of effort for this. And we plan to do a lot of focus groups with residents, workers, and business leaders. There's a lot of surveys out there that are very high level and broad, and people have a lot of survey fatigue. And we think that we could probably get the best responses by sitting down and actually talking to people one-on-one or in small groups along the corridor to see how they could use a service like this, how their employees could use a service, what kind of features they'd like to see from the service operating in the corridor. And then we'll also consider online engagement as well going forward. And that was just a very high level overview of this project, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I think it's worth mentioning that the northern study limit starts with State Road 52.
Okay,
And the
that's some of my
the
questions.
southern study limit, she showed it briefly on the map, would be the Gateway Airport area in Pinellas County.
So those are those 10, is that 10 or 15 there? I didn't
These
know.
are the 15 that then we would kind of whittle down to 10 to do a deeper dive on.
And who's doing the whittling?
It'll be a communal effort. We're going to be working together with the stakeholders and our partners.
Okay, and that's on, we're gonna have access to that. I don't remember where those were, and I just want to pay attention as we're starting to have redevelopment on 19 that we're keeping our eye on sites that have good connectivity and paying attention to that.
And the scope includes presentations to both the Port Pinellas Board and the Pasco MPO Board. So we'll make sure that you all stay engaged throughout.
And as you pointed out, there's been some marketing studies in North County that show trends and different kind of developments that will be occurring. So watching that closely and then getting input. The hardest thing for this stuff is that this is so long-term. It's not like that getting people engaged, organizations engaged, is so difficult. We're going to sit and talk about North Pinellas County, how it's going to look in 30 years or 20 years or 10, and people and then things change. People come, people go, elections happen, there's just so much. I mean, the conversation and advancing this is really important, but trying to engage people along the way is the hardest thing, I think. And it's not, and we can't just say, well, the MPO is getting together because it really doesn't capture the imagination. So I know it's always a challenge to try to get folks involved, but we have the university up there in Tarpon Springs that is a great venue for getting folks to come out and spend some time. Again, creativity on how we do that, I think is really going to be important. It's just a tough.
I always say, have you driven in Orlando or Miami lately? Because that's what we don't want to have. Jack's got his.
Sorry, Doug.
When you set these locations up, and I think from 52 is okay down, but we do have a connection point up in, I think it's Emerald Road, up in, where Little Road is kind of like right in the intersection. We got an interconnection with Hernando County. As we talk about trying to get those people down as well, it might be good to go at least take a look at that location as well. Nothing else between it, but at least that right there is a good transfer spot. Right below 52, we're actually building a new one right now. It's probably about 2 miles south. And that transfer station is gonna be a major hub for us to be able to transition from the Gulfview Mall over to there. So that might be another one to, I'm sure you are, but to pick that one in.
It's helpful. Thank you. We'll make sure we add that to the list.
Thanks.
One of the things we're looking at here is travel time, and having 15 stations doesn't make for express, really.
I
So
agree.
we might need to be looking at 7 to 10 stations. What are those optimally, where are those optimally located? How can development happen around it? What are plans in place? So it's a refinement, because if you're stopping 15 times, it's gonna take you a long time to make that whole thing.
And what you might find is you might even run 2 lines up and down. One to hit like every other one, et cetera. So at least you're going down, at least you get really close to where you want to go, but letting streamline so it does move quicker.
And I have to speak to the financial plan. So in the scope, we are gonna be putting a financial plan together, costs, operating, capital, all that. Revenues are gonna be a critical factor, because, you know, it's probably not gonna pay for itself. So we're gonna be presenting that financial plan to the local governments to see if there's a willingness to support it, if they feel like there's value in return for the ridership projections, and the catalyst it can serve potentially for redevelopment. Because I know our transit agency, and I'm pretty sure Pasco's transit agency, isn't sitting on a pile of funding reserves to introduce new service. So this will have to be something that the county commission, city councils will need to buy into and support. We potentially could get partnership dollars from the Florida Department of Transportation to launch the service, but those operating support dollars are limited and go away after a period of time. So we want to go in this eyes wide open that right now there's no funding in place for operating this service. But if we present a compelling plan and the public and elected officials such as yourselves see value in it, then just we're gonna ask for that contribution at some point.
I think I was just gonna add that, you know, when we start doing this, value added service is really what it comes down to, because there's nothing that I can imagine worse than spending all this money to do the studies and coming up with a plan where you're stuck in the same traffic everybody else is stuck in. And so it's not attractive, it's not fun. I mean, you can work a little bit while you're in there, but the idea is that you're trying to get people out of cars. I mean, I once talked to Whit about like, what percent of the population would it be, you know, ideal to get to? I mean, and we were like, what, 1.5% or something?
For commuters.
At the commuters, yeah. But, and the comment was maybe 10 to 15%. Well, that's a heavy lift to get there.
It's a big lift.
And there has to be a real, again, in theory, it all sounds good, but really when it comes right down to it, who's gonna give up their car to make the trip? And I think those are things, while we're going through our planning, how do we get people to do that, to even consider it? And it's certainly not being stuck in traffic along with other cars. So I don't know how it all pans out, but,
Well, as Chelsea mentioned, the good news is the Department of Transportation, at least in Pinellas County, and I think they're doing some things in Pasco as well for safety, primarily in the 19th quarter, is we've got a quarter study coming, and we have not done really any design north of Nebraska Avenue. So that will give an opportunity to incorporate this plan into whatever design ultimately comes. That's further out. But I would hope that we could at least initiate this express service as soon as 5 years from now. The redevelopment is the 30-year horizon, and the interchange and viaduct and all that stuff might be 20 years away. But you build these things incrementally, and you do what you can as quickly as you can.
well, I know I've spent a lot of time, poor Tom Washburn, he's head of our transportation,
County transportation.
county transportation, and calling him on, like, okay, I know most of the day, we think of it this way, but during rush hour, during business hours, like 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning, or can we not like take lane, like, I'm thinking, there's a 580 in Pinellas County, runs right through 19. And I said, can't we take the right lane that's wanting to merge onto 19, put a sign up there right now and say, from 6:30 to 8:30 in the morning, this is right turn only, because there's no right turn only lane there. So it just backs up like crazy and people get frustrated. It forces them into other neighborhoods to try to cut through and beat traffic. Just simple little solutions in the meantime. But for planning purposes, to me, those are critical things to jump out, whatever the situation is, that these are real things that don't take a lot of money and effort and time to develop, that we can do along the way. And at the same time, think about rush hour implications when we do this stuff, because those are peaks. There's seasonal peaks too, but there's daily peaks. And how do we deal with that in a new system that makes, again, value added sense? So Commissioner Ariana.
I was just gonna say, as far as like for the peak hours, maybe we could look at it just like our fire EMS people have, those red light cameras that kind of like make them go green. Maybe just for that window of time, we implement those.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so critical to get that flow going up and down. And if you're gonna make it move quicker, that's an easy way to do it. It's gonna mess up a little bit of traffic, but you know what? The big bulk is going north-south anyway, and that'll help everything else flow too.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the traffic engineer, but I mean, because I can ask the easy questions, you know, and just say, oh, this has got to be easy to do. And I know it's not like that, but it seems that there are some simpler solutions, at least interim ones that we can do. I know it's not regarding necessarily this plan, but when we're talking about it, I think those are pieces. Mr. Starkey.
This is kind of out there, but, and I haven't ridden on a lot of rapid transit bus systems, though. I've ridden on a lot of trains around the world. But to me, one of the ways we're gonna get more people into these buses is to make them be more like trains, I think. And so I think a lot of people would want to work as they're driving down. That's just how it is today. So when we get out there, I think we need to think of the configuration of these buses. I really think they need to act and feel like a train. And table, some kind of workspace, I think we have to be kind of forward thinking on what the feel of it is inside, not just like a school bus, So we've got to be more vision.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Hurtak has her hand raised.
Councilwoman Hurtak, you're up.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I just want to say that I piloted a fare-free Route 1 for HART in Hillsborough County that was $1.65 million. And we just got the numbers back. This started on January 5th. And there was a 26.7% increase in ridership because of that in 1 month, and simply from making it free. So you want to talk about how to get people on the bus and give it a try? It has been wildly successful. I was on the bus last night at 5 o'clock. There was no seat to be had.
Nice.
Yeah, free is for me.
Well, it's a start. It's a place
I
to start.
I get it. And we do have some of those examples in Pinellas too, where our Sunrunner was free for a while, just to get folks on it, trying it and seeing how it will mesh with their travel plans. And now I think we're charging now for it, but yeah, thank you, Councilwoman.
Yeah, it's I know that Mr. Willits is there and he can speak to it more, but it has been one of the things we're trying to do is figure out the numbers for how many cars that's taking off the street. So just so you know, Route 1 parallels I-275. So you're taking people off of both I-275 and Florida Avenue and Nebraska Avenue to get, and it's only $1.65 million for the year. Super cheap comparatively.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
I'll just add, thanks for stealing my thunder, Councilwoman Hurtak, but no, this was her baby. That as of January, the most popular transit route is no longer the streetcar. Route 1 has been higher ridership by 10,000 trips. And to her point, what we want to look at is the total trips, and the mode share on the corridor. Something that we want to look at is, so we're doing over 4,000 trips a day on Route 1 now. So we're gonna get some of the data from FDOT to look at how many vehicle trips are on the corridor, and we should see a much higher mode share, I think maybe 10 to 20% for transit. So when we talk about mode share at the county level, it's usually around 1% here, and that's mostly a product of our lack of investment. That's a measure of the input, which is minimal, and the output for ridership is gonna reflect the investment. I think a target would probably be like 3 to 5%. If you look at major metros, sometimes they're 5, 10%, even in the best places, you know? So I just wanted to put that out there and then kind of circle back to the previous presentation I didn't jump in on, but we're talking about adding all these jobs and housing in the core, specifically in Hillsborough, with no additional transit investment. And people are using the interstate that was supposed to be for regional traffic when it was originally conceived for local trips. And if we don't get some of those people on transit, it's gonna break the whole system. So $500,000 for Hillsborough is never gonna be enough. And this will be my last time at this meeting, so I had to throw out some nuggets.
I see, yeah.
Go out with a bang, Justin.
Did you, and in that a month and a half or whatever that's been going on, have you found it, like it's rush hour bumps in the use of that service, or is it really throughout the day, or what do you?
So that's a great question. So unlike like major commuter transit markets, we see a one big hump from rush hour through the middle of the day, through PM rush hour and down. We're seeing a little bit more of a spike during the peaks now, but we've got to kind of review that data a little bit more. I think it's true. There's still a little bit of a hump during the rush hour, but we run our frequent service from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. because it's busy the whole time. And we want to make sure that it's frequent during the rush hours to provide an option to commuters that have options. So it's a little bit of both, but we'll have to report.
How about age? Anything on the age demographic?
We're gonna do some surveys later.
Okay.
Early this year to kind of figure out who's riding that's new.
Yep.
If they're riding more and that sort of thing.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry to piggyback off of Justin a little bit, and I ride it at least 2 or 3 times a week. I have seen just from my personal observation, have seen a huge change in demographics, a lot of younger people that I wasn't really expecting. So I thought that was very interesting. I mean, again, this is just me as a bus rider, but I've seen more young people than I have in the last several years.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Well, I was just thinking about your comment that people are using 275 for a local trips. You saw the numbers in Pasco County. Something that's very different about our county than any of yours is we only have 2 east-west roads. We have a little piece of Ridge Road that will go, to a little part of our county. But when you look at my county, we have State Road 54 and we have State Road 52. And that's it. And we're doubling. So,
54, is it?
yeah, I'm going to talk about it when we get to other comments to DOT here in a second.
All right, well, we've got, what, we have 4 more presentations, so we're gonna move on. If we're okay, everybody. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Just had a quick question. I know we need to move on, but I don't want to lose this opportunity. So you said briefly that you're trying to get car trip data from DOT to correlate to the ridership data on the new free Route 1. To me, that's key because instinctively, intuitively, we think, okay, all this 26% of increase in ridership equates to a reduction in vehicle trips, which may or may not be true. It may very well be true. I hope it's true. But there are other studies that I've read that indicate that that's not always the case. It's just assumed. So I'm glad to hear that we're trying to get some car trip data to see if there's a commensurate reduction. And I hope there is. But I think that's a very powerful message if you can show that data at the same time. Our ridership went up 26% or whatever it is. And at the same time, there was a 4, 5, 6, whatever % reduction in vehicle trips. That additional piece of information really makes the story a whole lot more powerful when we're talking about funding future similar projects and making certain routes free. Look what we can do. And it also, not to get off track with the original presentation, it might also be useful information for other projects like this in the region.
Yeah, so the main thing I want to measure is the actual car trips versus the actual transit trips. But the complicating factor with proving that it did take any trips off during the construction of 275 is not going to be proved. There's other elements like
Growth.
whether it's a single crash, right, or just the friction created by the construction right now is wreaking havoc on our on-time performance because the downtown interchange is under construction. So there's other elements that may be pushing 5,000 more cars to Florida Avenue and in this time span that we can't really account for. But it is something we do want to look at, but I want to be careful not to say that we can say for sure, right? That'll be something on the survey. We'll ask people, be like, did this fare free pilot reduce the number of car trips you took on this corridor? And if we get like a 10% yes for the new riders, like that's a significant data point for us to think about and like to understand. But it's going to be very hard to say, you know, it could be 2 crashes in a week on 275 added thousands of trips to the parallel corridor. And like, it's very.
I want real data and not intuitive stuff. You know, and I know it's not always easy to get, but everybody always talks about, oh, we need transit, we need to take all these cars off the road. But every city that you go to that has a robust transportation system also has a hell of a lot of traffic. I mean, it doesn't seem like that takes everybody off the road. And so if it does, I'm just trying to strengthen our argument of why we should fund these things. And if we go. Thank you.
Can I ask you one quick question? When you do your survey, do you ask, I'm curious, how do people get to the transit stop? And what do they do at the end? Are they using some kind of multimodal, are they using Uber or something to get to the next destination? I'm very curious about how that part's working.
Tampa Bay standards, that's a really walkable. So
yeah,
80-90%.
And how are they getting to the transit stop? When they get on the bus, how are they getting?
That'll be part of the.
Yeah. What I'm saying is most of them are walking trips or transfers from other buses. But we'll take that out.
Okay.
That last mile.
Is Craig Fox from FDOT. We're going to talk Courtney Campbell Causeway, PD&E, and State Road 60 corridor study.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Craig Fox with the Florida Department of Transportation's District 7, here to talk about Courtney Campbell Causeway.
I'm here. You can stop me.
So first I'll show the study limits for the PD&E project. The limits are starting at the west end, which you can see by the red and white line to the left. It starts at County Road 611, North McMullen Road, and then it goes east along State Road 16, crossing the county line and ending just west of the Veterans Expressway for State Road 589. So the scope of the study is to increase safety along the corridor. We're also looking at bike pedestrian infrastructure. Of course, we know we have the Courtney Campbell Trail along there, but we're looking at what enhancements we can do to it to increase connectivity. Capacity improvements, access management, resiliency. And of course, with these 2 hurricanes that came through, one thing that definitely got impacted was a trail. So we're looking at improvements to that to make it more resilient and just overall corridor in general, and also base circulation. You may remember that we constructed the Virginia Creighton Bridge not too long ago. That drastically helps to increase the water quality. Of course, because before the causeway was there, it was open flow. So we're looking with this project to look at other opportunities to increase the health of the health of the waterway also. So the timeline, the contract is executing in June of this year, 2025. So we don't have a consultant on board yet, but we are working on that. And then we're looking to have a kickoff meeting through the 3rd or 4th quarter of calendar year of this year. That's where we're on the process for that. And the next item we have going on is the State Road 60 corridor study. And the limits of this are from east of Shore Drive to east of North Rocky Point Drive. So it kind of covers some limits of the PD&E also. So this is a planning study, not necessarily a PD&E study. So the study is going to focus, well, we talked about the project limits. It's also going to cover it, but then the planning study has a little bit of a wider focus to looking at more origin destination data from a wider breadth than the PD&E is more kind of focused on that short corridor. The student will be on board imminently. They're wrapping up their procurement process right now. School development is ongoing, and they're looking at a kickoff either spring or summer of 2025.
Craig, can I interrupt you? Just
Sure.
Shore Drive, can you give a general geographic? Is that like
Yeah.
the roundabout beach area?
So that is. Let me just look it up. Okay. Shore Drive. I went to downtown Clearwater.
I thought we were on the other side of the Memorial Causeway Bridge.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. But it's,
Right before the roundabout.
So one of the things that I always hear from Clearwater officials is we don't have a north-south problem, we have an east-west problem in Clearwater. Yeah, I'm not sure I completely agree, but I understand the east-west issue for sure.
okay. Yeah. So where there's, so if you're in westbound on State Road 60, right before you have that crosswalk, that's where Shore Drive is. So yeah.
Just prior to the roundabout.
On the
Yeah,
beach.
and that's actually where State Road 60 ends the state facility, because after that, then it becomes a local road.
Just before you get to the roundabout.
Mhm. And then I have our contact information. Next slide. Again, I'm Craig Fox. So I'll be leading the PD&E study. And then Jensen Hackett there is a contact for the State Road 60 corridor study, which is from Clearwater and the beaches to
So a big part of this one, for those who maybe don't know Pinellas County so well, is this will be looking at the Gulf to Bay and Belcher Road intersection, which has been at least looked at as an interchange possibly, which current estimates are, somewhere north of several $100 million. So that would be a long-term potential project. But I think a lot of this is going to look at short-term safety and mobility, and then there'll be a long-term component as well. But this is probably our thorniest transportation problem in Pinellas County because it's not easily solvable. Because if you ever drive down Gulf to Bay, if you're trying to get to Clearwater Beach, there are businesses literally right up against the right-of-way, and in some cases residents, but mostly it's a business, it's a commercial corridor.
You talking about doing a flyover or something there?
Well, I mean, there's going to be, I'll let Craig answer that, but I think this is going to look at all options. All options are on the table as far as I'm concerned.
What else is there?
And well, 25 years ago, we had a plan for a monorail in that corridor. And the county commission didn't support it, so it didn't go forward. I don't know if a monorail is going to come back, but we have looked at elevated options in that corridor before.
And I'm assuming that the parallel roads, Drew, and
That'll all be looked
will
at.
all be part of the discussion.
Of the planning study, yeah.
Of the planning cycle.
That's right.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, you got off easy.
He's still got another one to get.
All right. You got off easy on.
Not yet, no.
Let's move on to State Road 54, that little intersection up in Pasco.
Please put a map up.
A big map.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Eric Fox again, here to talk about US 41 and State Road 54. So the location of this project is at US 41 and State Road 54. The project limits are shown in yellow on the image to the right. Oh, wait, you know what? This thing's a part, right? Oh, no.
I can zoom in if you want. I was gonna give you zoom in, yeah.
Yeah, so as you look at the project's area, so the project goes around 1.5 miles along US 41, so that's from the bottom right corner of the map to the top. And then along State Road 54, it goes both east and west of 41 around 1.2 miles with around a 0.3 mile section of Dillon Mayberry Highway. And that's the bottom left corner there. Actually, next slide, yeah. All right, so now we're looking at the existing typical section. So looking north on US 41, that's the image in the top right. We have 3 lanes in each direction with a 6-foot sidewalk on the east side. And then on the west side there, we have the CSX railroad tracks. And then in the bottom image that shows 54, we're looking east along 54. You have similar typical section, 3 lanes in each direction. You also have a 4-foot bike lane and 6 to 8-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road. So the project is needed to exist both current and future congestion along the corridor. As you know, both US 41 and State Road 54 are heavily traveled roads. And that's unique when we come to, a lot of times it'll be one clears a major road, one clears a minor road. This one, they're both fairly major roads. So it has level surface F during AM peak hours. And currently we're looking at the 63,000 vehicles per day along State Road 54. That's looking to increase in 2045 to 98,000 vehicles per day. And then for 41, it's going to increase from 69,000 vehicles per day to 87,000 vehicles per day. So pretty drastic increases on both roads. And the intersection crash rate is 2.263 crashes per million vehicle miles traveled, which is above the statewide average for a similar intersection at 1.1. So there's significant safety increases to be had at the intersection also. So this plan is consistent with the long-range transportation plans. And it's also a high-priority project with its uncle's transportation planning lines. So now we're looking at the preferred build alternative. So the project is putting State Road 54 over 41. So on 41, the typical section will look similar to what it is today. You still have the 3 lanes in each direction, but we are making some enhancements. We are doing a wider bike lane, 7-foot bike lane on both north and southbound routes. We're also maintaining the 6-foot sidewalk on the east side, and we're adding a 10-foot sidewalk on the west side. We're adding it on the west side because with less driveways, this is a much kind of safer facility to encourage bicycle traffic along there because you have the CSX railroad crossing. So it's gonna be 10-foot wider sidewalk on the west side.
Hold on one second. I have a question. Go
Well,
ahead.
who would ride their bike on a highway like that?
So there are some bicycle riders that currently do it today. And what we're doing, we're not trying to say that every single rider is gonna wanna ride in the road, but we're just giving the opportunity for those that want to. And then we're also giving an opportunity for those that would prefer to ride on the sidewalk. So there are current riders that we have through that intersection right now. So just trying to accommodate them and also accommodate some of the riders that don't feel comfortable riding on the roadway.
I just think it's crazy. I would rather see the extra footage go into a wider multi-use path that maybe segregates a portion of the user type than add 14 feet to the highway. I mean,
You're obviously not one of the crazy bicycle riders. I'm not either. I know Whit is.
my husband's a big cyclist. He would never ride on
Yeah,
US
no, I
41.
understand. That's what I'm saying. I agree. That was what my question as well. It's like, I can't
I don't-
imagine, and I'm guessing the speed limit there, 45 or 50? What is
Yeah, around that.
around that? So,
Yeah.
and you're gonna add another lane, probably gonna go 5 miles an hour more. So
Well, on 41, we're actually not adding additionally, so it's maintaining the same 6 lanes that are on there today.
We don't have 7-foot bike lanes on 41, do we?
No, I'm talking about the travel lanes, the automobile lanes. You still have, can you go back one slide?
Yeah, I was gonna.
So you have the same 3 lanes in each direction. And it's similar to what's out there. Well, same as what's out there today as far as the vehicular lanes. And then we're adding the bike lanes, we're adding the sidewalk on the west side because currently there's no sidewalk on the west side.
So people who know the difference in that setup versus a sidewalk that is wider without having a lane on the road, how do the bike riders view that? I mean, what is the? Yeah, please, somebody.
Please, because I'm thinking of the Katy Trail in Texas.
So the configuration of this is a lot like Ulmerton Road right out here. And if you spend enough time on Ulmerton Road, you will see there are a lot of bicyclists in the bike lane. They are predominantly low income, probably don't have a car. but
Is
they're
there
out there.
a multi-use path on the side of it?
No,
Well,
not now.
there will be on Ulmerton Road at some point, and people can shift there. But, you know, what I will say is that, having that 7-foot bike lane is pretty comfortable, because you don't need 7 feet to ride a bicycle. So you have a buffer, you have a separation. The problem with being on a sidewalk or even a multi-use path on a heavily commercial roadway is that is probably the least safe place to ride. It's counterintuitive, but people coming in and out of driveways are not looking for you. That you are not in their cone of vision. They are looking for a gap in the car traffic. And they're not gonna see a bicyclist up on the sidewalk, especially if you're riding in the wrong direction against traffic, which people do. So I think it's laudable for DOT to be providing both options. I don't know how well it's gonna be used by any of us here in this room. But I've ridden on Ulmerton Road when I've had to. It's not really comfortable.
No.
It's not. And I don't know that we want people to necessarily do that. But not providing it is just, to me, is unconscionable, because somebody's gonna be out there, and then where are they gonna ride otherwise? So
Well, I wasn't proposing keeping the same, width sidewalk, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, there are places to ride and not to ride. That's why for US 19, when we're doing the frontage roads, there's gonna be more like a 10-foot wide sidewalk as opposed to a bike lane. Because whenever we were out there looking at conditions, every bicyclist who came by was up on the sidewalk and not in the little 3-foot barely bike
Full of
lane.
glass and.
Yeah, so the
No.
7-foot bike lane gives you a lot better ability to avoid all that glass and all that crap. And it also gives you protection from the cars going so fast over there. If it was 4 feet or 5 feet, I'd totally be in your camp. This is a little bit better. It's not ideal.
No, I understand. That's why I was asking, because I'm not a bike rider.
Yeah.
And if I were, I'd be on the sidewalk.
I try to
Never
avoid that
on the
road.
road?
I really do. But I see so many people on the sidewalk, and I see so many people, why aren't you just on the sidewalk? For many roads, that's just not a safe place to be if it's commercialized. If you don't have driveways, sidewalk's probably okay.
But wait, if you're on the 7-foot shoulder or bike lane, you're still crossing the roads that are coming out. I mean, the cars coming out of those side roads are still coming
But they're
out.
looking at the road to see a gap in traffic. So you're in their line of vision more than you would be on the sidewalk, generally speaking.
Do you have issues with, like, again, I'm thinking of typical shoulders, people pull over, have an issue of flat or whatever. That's what they use. They use the bike lane at that
They
point.
do, yeah, and then you
just
gotta
have to-
avoid them.
You have to, okay.
Yeah.
Oh. And that's a normal, abnormal activity.
You look for a gap in traffic, or you look for a way to get up on the sidewalk and then get back over.
Mr. Mariano has.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'd like to see what Trey Starkey has to say about this.
I'd kill him if he were on that.
Commissioner
All right,
Starkey has shown concern about a
Triple
trail,
my
and
insurance on it.
it's a major step. I've never heard it before. But I'll give it my thought. When I look at the accidents that are out there, it's like twice as high as the normal for FDOT, so something to be extra cautious. If we're gonna have the lane, I think safety wise, having cars like whizzing by, I think it is that we need to put some type of safety thing going on there. Even if you lose a foot and it goes from 7 to 6, put a concrete piece on there that people are safe if they're on the other side. I think it's gonna
Ain't it
be
different, something?
something in there to kind of keep it in, to keep a barrier. I like so if you're gonna keep the approach, and then if you're coming up, now it's gonna free up all those people that are trying to cross. And for the people down below as they're going through, they have to wait for light, slow down 3 lanes, that speeds up the flow underneath too.
And I guess I'm assuming with your thought that there are a lot of curb cuts along the way that have to cross those.
Not for the mile and a half. We're just talking about a mile and a half.
Oh, just the mile and a half.
I'm talking about all 41.
Right, I'm just talking about that.
He's talking about all 41.
Right, but just for that one section, all we're looking is we're just getting people up and over to go through, and I think it's even easier than some of these crossovers that you have, we gotta go.
Well,
to the
54
side,
is going
up and
over, right?
Yeah,
just
so
go straight
just
through.
want to interject real quick. So it is 54 going over 41. However, on US 41, because of the railroad track on the west side, there are much less driveways there than there are on the east side. And that's kind of why we're putting the wider facility on the west side of the road.
Yeah.
And Witt's exactly right, with riding on the sidewalk, I'm on a bike right now, but I used to ride the bike on the road a lot. I felt way more dangerous being on the sidewalk because of those driveways, and my close calls were mostly on when I was on the sidewalk. So it does offer you, so it is a more, it's risky, or, well, it feels riskier, definitely, but then, when you count the additional driveways, it does make it a lot harder. But because you have the railroad on the west side, that makes it significantly safer, just because you have way less conflicts.
Okay, and you've got your preferred build for 54? I mean,
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
because that's what I want to comment on.
Okay, yeah, no problem. And as far as the speed, so right now, existing on Dale Mabry and 41 is 50 miles an hour. On State Road 54, it's actually 45. It's faster coming in, but then it slows down when it gets close to the intersection. So if you go to the preferred, okay. So for State Road 54, so this one you mentioned is elevated. So you have 2 lanes elevated in the middle, going over US 41. And then you have 2 lanes on the outside that service frontage roads. So we will still be able to make all the movements at the intersections. And we're also incorporating Texas U-turns, which are basically U-turns before you get to the intersection for, that it helps to increase access. So basically, if you have to get to some part north or south of the roadway, you can just go ahead and use a Texas U-turn. You don't have to wait for an actual signal to get through there. And I have a diagram that I can show you after this. This shows a little bit better than I was saying. And we also have sidewalks 6-foot sidewalks on both the north side and south side of the road.
No bike lanes?
There are bike lanes. If you go back, yeah, so there are sorry. I was mistaken, I'm sorry. Yes or no bike lanes.
No, but the bike lanes are at grade, right? There's no overpass for cyclists.
No, yeah. So, and we have received comments from the public and both from some of the MPO committees to widen the sidewalks, so we are looking into that. We do have the
We
right
don't
of way
even have
forward,
multi-use
so.
path there. We only have sidewalks on either side.
That
Yes.
was a recommendation from the CAC to you to get multi-use paths.
Yeah.
So there is no bike lane on this alternative.
That's correct. On this typical section, we do not have bike lanes, so we are looking at widening the sidewalks. But we're taking comments from the public, including today from you all, and we do have the right of way to accommodate that. So the more public comments we get,
It's just trying to get your thinking on that, because in this case, you do have the shoulders on the elevated piece and no bike lane. In the other road,
Yeah,
you had the bike lanes doubling as the shoulder. So what's the thinking?
So we try to avoid putting bike lanes on overpasses. And part of it's safety, and part of it's because so part of safety and also access. So we had a similar situation like this on our US 41 and CSX project, and we ended up building an alternative route for cyclists to go.
And
we
I
had white
imagine that's
sidewalks
what
connectors too.
you're gonna have a separate pedestrian overpass on this intersection.
Okay.
I think, multimodal.
Or certainly a much wider sidewalk.
So that's one point I wanted to make. We're not taking into account multimodal transportation in this intersection. And the second is kind of the point I made earlier. One day, just like you planned, I think, for the Howard Franklin to have that corridor down the middle, there's no room here for any kind of transit on that in this diagram. So, one day, very likely 54 is going to have to have, hopefully we'll get some kind of transit, and we haven't put enough width to put something in the middle here. So I wanted to comment on that. I've heard from some of our folks, like Brian, who heads up our BPAC, that are 2 lanes enough too? Or one day, are you gonna come back in and make that 3 lanes in either side one day?
So it is possible to expand it, but one thing to note is that when you're looking at the intersection, because it's free flow conditions, that processes traffic a lot more efficiently than if there was an actual signal. And we also, one of the major issues at this intersection are the turns. So it's more so like the northbound and westbound movement is fairly heavy. Northeast is decent, but northbound and westbound is very heavy. So when you look at what's actually causing the problems at this intersection, it's not necessarily the capacity of free flow traffic through the intersection, it's more so the turn lane. So this, by separating the through lane traffic, it'll increase efficiency of the at-grade intersection to process those turns more efficiently.
All right, anything else?
So this is the bridge typical section, which we mentioned. We can keep going. So the PDD is looking at various environmental factors, including wetland surface waters, protected species, archaeological resources, community impacts, relocations, also noise and contamination. And the results of that will be at the public hearing, which we have coming up on March 25th. So when we look at right-of-way impacts, we're looking at impacts to 79 parcels. So that includes both partial impacts and also full takes. The vast majority of impacts are going to be partial and not whole takes. So we're looking at a total of, looking at 36 potential business relocations and 4 potential residential relocations. And here we have the evaluation matrix and the different factors that we look at, and all this information will also be available at the public hearing and on the website about a week before the hearing. And so we look at the cost, the right-of-way costs for both the roadway and the ponds, that also includes floodplain compensation sites, are totaling over $200 million, with construction being at $208 million, with the total project costs, including all phases, at $516 million. So just a quick review of the timeline. So we did have a public hearing back in 2015. And then from 2017 to 2020, the Pasco Vision 54-56 study did take place. And then after I came back and from that, we resulted in 4 different alternatives. And so we analyzed those alternatives, 4 including the no build. So we analyzed those alternatives and came with a single point urban interchange, or the SPUI alternative, was the alternative that the department selected. And now we are gearing up for the public hearing. We also have a design, which we're scoping out right now. And what we're trying to do, basically, we're trying to set ourselves up so that if additional funding does come, that we're in a good position to move forward with it. We don't want to get caught kind of flat-footed if we get funding. So right now, the project isn't fully funded for right-of-way or construction, but we're just setting ourselves up so that funding does come through, we can move forward as quickly as possible. All right, so the public hearing is Tuesday, March 25th. It's going to be held in person at the Land O' Lakes Recreation Complex, and also simultaneously online. Comments, we ask that comments are received by April 4th. They can be mailed, emailed, or submitted through the website. We'll have court reporter, of course, like any other public hearing in the in-person venue. Documents are currently available at the Land O' Lakes Branch Library and will remain there until April 4th. All right, so we have the public hearing coming up on the 25th. And we're looking to have an approved PDD this summer. And like I mentioned, design is currently undergoing scoping, so that should get started. And I think there'll probably be around a year until they wrap it up as far as getting to phase 2. And phase 2 is on a 6-plan plan. That's as far along as we get if we don't have funding, because at that point it's easier to pivot and adjust to any kind of future standard changes that happen. This is my contact information, and look forward to seeing everybody at the public hearing. Now until for any other questions.
Thank you, appreciate it. We have to move along. I'm going to try to honor our 11:30 adjournment time. So I know we have a couple of other presentations to go. So Johnny is going to talk about Branch 4 with McIntosh and Veterans Expressway.
Thank you, members. I'll get us back on track and I'll have some time for the machine. This is not necessarily a planning initiative. The PD&E has been completed. This project is now allowed to advance into design. My TPO just last month approved these amendments to the LRTP, and we had been briefed on the PD&E the month before in January, and Craig Fox was the lead PM. So the 2 projects are on the non-SIS network, DOT's cost feasible plan. The 2 projects are to widen local roads, Branch Forbes and McIntosh, which are just east of Plant City, connecting US 92 to I-4. Currently, Branch Forbes and McIntosh Road are one lane each direction with no median separation. This project, as it advances, will widen from 2 to 4 lanes and also add some bicycle pedestrian amenities. Can you advance, please? Our TPO's task was to evaluate these relative to other projects in the cost feasible plan, which we did. Both these projects performed relatively well with respect to the other 50 or so local projects that we wanted to advance in the long range plan. Would you advance, please? For cost revenue balancing, the decision that we were forced to make is which project in the adopted non-SIS cost feasible plan would we remove or delay out into the future to free up the funding to advance Branch Forbes and McIntosh. My board they elected to delay out a widening project on MLK Boulevard in East County from McIntosh Road to Turkey Creek Road. And the reason why we decided this would be the best candidate is because it would not impact any other state or local projects that are anticipated to come online within the time period. So this would have the least negative impact while still allowing the other projects on the non-SIS to move forward. I included a map. It's a little stretched out, but just for context, again, McIntosh and Branch Forbes are currently one lane each direction. These projects will widen a roughly 1 mile segment and allow for US 92 and I-4 to serve as more effective divergent routes. US 92 and I-4, as you all know, have significant impacts on in and outbound regional traffic. They're highly traveled freight corridors, and widening McIntosh and Branch Forbes and modifications to the I-4 ramps will allow for divergence in the event of emergency evacuations or non-recurring congestion due to crashes or anything like that. We anticipate that this project will reduce the current LOS on McIntosh and Branch Forbes from a forecasted F to an E. I guess that's
Is that a big enough jump?
And in terms of the amenities, because I know you're interested, both these corridors will have a 10-foot wide shared use path, barriers separated from the edge of the roadway. Any questions on that?
Any questions?
All right, thank you.
I don't see anybody online, right? Okay, Machine. Talk about regional ferry market research.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Nosheen Rahman. I'm a principal planner at Fort Pinellas, and today I'm here to update you all on a market demand study that we at the MPO conducted for regional waterborne transportation. So if this is a newer topic for you, or if we just need a quick refresher, this is something that has been an ongoing regional effort. People in the room have collaborated on this effort as well. In our LRTP, we identify it as a viable mode of transportation in terms of having the potential to reduce congestion on our roadways. We've also in the past convened a waterborne transportation committee at Fort Pinellas to guide waterborne transportation policy for funding, and also worked in collaboration with PSTA to apply for a service development grant to establish service for the Clearwater Ferry, which as of last month, I believe, is up and running despite the very frigid weather that kept pushing that back. And we've also coordinated with PSTA on ridership forecasting for the waterborne ferry service across the bay, which is now, of course, the Cross Bay Ferry. So our latest effort in coordinating or kind of evaluating the effectiveness of waterborne transportation has been through this market demand study. And much like all of us at the NPOs, a lot of the work that we do is in coordination or in request from our partners. And in this case, the market demand study was done in collaboration with the St. Pete Chamber of Commerce, specifically through their Transportation and Housing and Land Use Committee. They, as a chamber, as a city, have kind of been evaluating how they can be in the best spot to provide and enhance waterborne transportation services, especially given their geographic location within the Bay. And as the MPO, we helped them conduct this market demand study. And I should provide a primer on the purpose of a demand study. Unlike ridership projections or studies like that, this market demand study is not intended to predict or project the ridership that any transportation service will have, but rather serve as sort of a litmus test for understanding what the desire is from the general public and from stakeholders in enhancing the service, what that looks like, who's going to ride it, where they actually want to go to and from, and also what kind of attributes and characteristics that service should have for it to be considered effective for them. So in order to have a kind of holistic market demand study, this process included both one-on-one interviews with regional partners and stakeholders, including the Hillsborough TPO. I know that Johnny was one of the folks that we interviewed for the market demand study, as well as other regional partners on both sides of the Bay. And the survey was also conducted for the market demand study, which was available to the general public, both permanent residents and seasonal visitors, as both demographics have engaged in our waterborne transportation services in the region. And it was also supported by quantitative analysis, including the demographic information like the projections that we talked about earlier, workforce quantitative statistics, as well as commuter travel patterns, recognizing that it can be a way for commuters to get around. And ultimately, the survey resulted in market segments, identifying key market areas and those attributes of importance, those factors that I mentioned that would get people to ride waterborne transportation. So from a regional level, I just want to highlight a couple of things that came out of the study itself. And that is sort of the workforce and travel commute patterns and opportunities that the market demand study presented. Of all the folks that were surveyed, 20% of the South Tampa respondents, so those workers who live in South Tampa, indicated that they commute to St. Petersburg. Similarly, 20% of St. Petersburg workers and commuters indicated that they commute outside of St. Petersburg to areas like downtown Tampa, Palmetto, Temple Terrace, and South Tampa across the Bay. And interestingly, 23% of Dunedin residents, or rather respondents of the survey, indicated that they commute to South Tampa. And I would say the importance of these statistics just identifies the regional needs and opportunities and connectivity that the respondents, commuters, and workers are needing in terms of getting around our region. So just to provide a very high-level overview of the findings, of all those that were surveyed, the likelihood of use was identified as 83%. Now reminding everyone in this room that that is simply a litmus test and a gauge of the interest for waterborne transportation, and that's dependent on those attributes of importance that individuals identified. Between seasonal residents, tourists, and permanent residents, the attributes of importance that were identified were the schedule, ease of use or convenience, the geography of the docks and their locations, and the affordability of the service or the ticket price itself. And between the seasonal visitors and tourists and the permanent residents, they were able to identify their top 3 attributes of importance, and the only difference between the seasonal visitors and the residents were, for the visitors, it was the affordability, and for the permanent residents, it was the schedule, which I think makes sense when you consider what your priorities are when you're visiting somewhere versus when you're living somewhere. They were also able to identify their top ferry routes of interest, and these are not necessarily grounded in existing services, but rather just asking them with a blank slate, what kind of ferry services would you like to see? Which locations would you like to see them go to? St. Pete to and from Tampa remaining number 1. Interestingly, a lot of people through the one-on-one interviews and through the survey also indicated having some sort of service that gets them to the airport, Tampa International Airport specifically. While we might recognize kind of the geographic and logistical barriers that are in place for this to happen, I think what that really highlights is that people are looking for regional connections to get them to the airport without relying on their vehicle or without having to pay for parking at the airport. And then people also indicated an interest to get from St. Pete to and from Anna Maria Island and Bradenton down to our partners in Sarasota. So that is kind of just the high-level overview of the findings. The entire report has been published on our website, and I'm happy to share it with anyone interested. But our next steps include continued collaboration with the St. Pete Chamber. The impetus behind this market demand study was from their interest in it, as well as their coordination in convening a technical panel to identify some of the best practices for identifying enhancements to waterborne transportation. And we also always continue to collaborate with PSTA as they expand their multimodal transportation options available to Pinellas County and the region. So with that, I can take any questions, and thank you for your time.
I wonder if this would be a good opportunity for Brad just to provide an update on what you're currently working on.
Sure. Hello, yes, we are now multimodal with boats. The Clearwater Ferry launched on January 16th, and just in the the Clearwater Ferry runs from downtown Clearwater, just a very short distance over to Clearwater Beach, paralleling a project you talked about earlier, the Causeway Bridge on 60 over to the beach. It will ultimately go to Dunedin as well, but the Dunedin's marina got messed up by the hurricane, so that's on pause right now, and hopefully will be launched in the next couple of months with a temporary dock up in Dunedin. But just in the first month, well, not even a whole month, the first couple of weeks of the ferry, ridership exceeded what the ferry had done in any previous January month. For both Dunedin and Clearwater, just on Clearwater, just under 1,000 rides in the period that we operated. That I haven't seen February, but I know it's been very popular. The city of Clearwater, also has implemented, built the sound amphitheater since it last ran on a regular, the ferry ran on a regular basis. And at least when I rode it on Saturday, there was lots of older folks riding from the beach to see Willie Nelson on the ferry.
All right.
So
Party boat.
right? It is very nice. If any of you have gone on it, we had a nice launch event, and if it's a nice day, there's no better way. And then plus, it just optically, it is so great because you just see the traffic. You go right under the bridge and you see the line of cars for that. We were approached about a year ago by the funders of the Cross Bay Ferry, which Nushin talked about, that goes from St. Petersburg to Tampa. That is a contracted service, very much similar to the Clearwater Ferry, that has been run by Hillsborough, been overseen by Hillsborough County for the last several years. About that contract is coming to an end, and that could PSTA issue an RFP and oversee a contracted service in the future. So they're working on that, and then the cities of St. Petersburg, Tampa, and Hillsborough, who fund the ferry, came to me and said, well, we have this grant that has not been used for a boat for the ferry. And could you see if that could be of use? And what we found with the Clearwater Ferry was the state DOT, the legislature approved funding, and the state DOT provided a grant for the boats that were running in Clearwater. And we got a much lower price from the provider in the Clearwater. And I know that there are different environments and different size boats and all that, but the cost of the Clearwater Ferry is 1/4, even less than the current cost of the Cross Bay Ferry.
Oh, wow.
Because that boat, they bring that boat down from Boston, they bring the crews down from Boston, they put them up in hotels, they pay for their meals. It is just a lot. It is not a very efficient setup the way it's been operating now. And I think if we are able to use this grant and get the vessels, kind of like what happened in Clearwater, to be used there, we can get a lot lower cost service, a lot lower subsidy for all the partners, and it can be more successful in the future. So that's what we're working on now.
Yes, did you have?
No, you first.
Just a quick question. How many people were interviewed and responded to this survey?
I believe we interviewed 11 folks across the region, and the number of survey respondents we got were somewhere around 260 people. And the survey was considered statistically valid with a 6% margin of error, which just essentially means that if you were to either expand or contract the survey sample, the results would only vary within that 6% margin of error.
How could 200 people be statistically valid in a community with this many people?
That's a great question. The statistically valid kind of metric isn't based on the number of respondents, but rather the methods through which the survey was conducted and the way that the quantitative analysis was done, which our consultant who was on this project specializes in this kind of market research to do so regardless of survey size. But it is a very good point about the sample size itself. We were meant to put out the surveys right before the hurricanes hit, and then we're up against that timeline a little bit after the hurricanes. So we recognize that that could have impacted the results.
Thank you, and I'll be brief. And by the way, I mean, I'd love to see this. I'm in favor of the whole idea and everything, but I'm thinking when you're saying this, that the only people who are gonna respond to this survey are people who are predisposed to be in favor of the idea. They're not gonna respond to the survey if they don't care about a ferry. I don't know how you would do it any differently. I'm not criticizing. I don't know how you would get. But I just question with, and I'm not questioning your research methods, I'm not questioning that. But 200 people responded, 11 were interviewed, and those people were almost 100% predisposed to be in favor of the ferry. So I don't know how you know, how many people, 1.5 just in Hillsborough, I don't know how many, right. So that's a lot of.
What I will add is that when we presented this to the St. Pete Chamber, we recognized that some of the markets that hadn't necessarily been captured were East Hillsborough, thinking about Apollo Beach, and down to Sarasota, Manatee County. So part of that continued collaboration will be focusing on those market segments now that we have a better idea of the metrics that folks are asking for.
And I don't mean to be critical.
No, not at all.
So we are looking to do a little bit of a supplement to target those areas specifically where it looks like there's emerging demand and see if we can quantify that a little bit better.
Yes.
Question kind of for Brad. If the service is successful, would you see modifying bus routes to provide those connections to the locations? And follow up, maybe for WIT, maybe for New Sheen, if it's really successful, could you see doing a supplement to identify what ferry-oriented TOD looks like? That's like way out there.
We need a couple more wins in TOD before we go to FTOD, but I hear that.
So I think one of the challenges we have on our side of the bay is that the dock location for the Cross Bay Ferry is less than ideal right now because it's down by the, the Dali Museum area, Albert Whitted.
South of the airport.
South of the airport, yeah. So the previous dock location was right there in the Vinoy Basin. PSTA has a new downtown Sunrunner station that would be very close to where the old ferry dock is located. So St. Pete is looking at an engineering study to figure out a detailed plan for the dock location. And I'm hopeful that with this RFP, shortly thereafter, we'll have a more permanent dock location in St. Pete. And then it'll be right there within a very easy short walk of the Sunrunner. So you could come over on the ferry, hop on the Sunrunner and be at the beach 25 minutes later, 30 minutes later. So that's much better than driving to the beach, by the way.
We did do what you're describing, in Clearwater. We have changed the route of the trolleys. The trolleys, the Jolly trolley that goes in, so that goes right, we send it down to where the ferry picks up in down at Clearwater. For that reason.
That last mile.
It's a big hill going up the bluff. So we're good to have the Jolly.
On the beach we do.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks, Nishi. Appreciate it. And we do have about 15 minutes, 10 minutes or so. If you have any other topics, or if you want to revisit any of the ones that we've talked about, I didn't mean to rush it through at all, but I want to make sure we at least touched on all the topics before we got out of here. So, Commissioner Mariano.
I was looking at my calendar and it showed we had a tentative date for the TMA to be seen next on May 23rd. Now it's moved to the 16th. at Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, we had set up a summit for resiliency from the 15th and 16th. So you're gonna be, if we're gonna go with the current date that shows May 16th, now that we've already set the summit up, we're gonna get a lot of people that aren't gonna be able to go to the summit, so I don't think it's
Yeah, I'm not available.
it's not a good, I don't think it's a good switch. I really could see it switch it back or pick a different day. Because we've already set that up from that last May.
What day were we looking at before?
We had the 16th set up.
Oh,
The
and
21st.
The summit's on the 15th, 16th. The
Summit is the
time
15th,
before we had that, it looks like it was.
That's a Saturday,
May
Sunday?
23rd. No, be a Thursday, Friday.
What was the TMA before that? I think.
May 23rd is what I had in my calendar. That was
Yeah,
scheduled and
make
then
that.
canceled.
But we're talking March?
No, May.
Oh,
May.
I'm sorry, I was looking at March and your dates were like,
Sorry.
I had the wrong year or something. Okay, May,
Be out of
I
town on
apologize.
I could come in virtually.
We had the 23rd, yeah. Did that, who canceled that?
The 23rd and the 30th were optional in case we needed them, but the 16th was the date that was set. However, if the 30th works for everyone and it's still a placeholder in everyone's calendar, we can change that to make that the official day.
What's the Friday before?
The 23rd. What happened to the
Is the
23rd?
23rd the Friday before Memorial Day?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Just to add to that, just from a.
Hold on, everybody.
The
Listen.
scheduling process for the regional MPO procurement in May, on the 16th, we had anticipated taking to you the selection of the consultant. We can push that back by a week or two, but it gets very tight in order to take it to the Hillsborough TPO board in June. So the 30th is the absolute latest that we could do from a schedule perspective to make the Hillsborough TPO in June and keep you on schedule. We do need a May meeting of this
Okay.
to keep that.
So of those sitting here, does a 30th work?
30th or 23rd works for me.
Yeah, 23rd is better.
23rd's the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. I just want to make sure people trying to scoot aren't, I guess maybe we don't scoot as much in this as public servants, but we do some scooting. Anybody that's online, the three commissioners, council people, are you okay for, is there a day, it's the 23rd or 30th work for you all?
Hey, it's Gina Driscoll. I can do either one.
Okay.
This is Len Hertak. The 23rd works, the 30th it does not.
Okay.
See if that's-
Seth, are you there? Seth must have left us. And you're good with the 23rd? 23rd, okay for you?
Yes, I prefer it to the 3rd.
23rd is the date. We don't know the place yet, do we? But yeah, to be determined what I have.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So we'll look at the 23rd. Anything, did you have something, Commissioner Turkey?
Yes, I wanted to bring up just that discussion on 54 and 41. Just make sure everyone understands 54 and 41, that's part of our SIS, part of our hurricane evacuation route. And we don't have the funding. There's not, what do we have, 33 million?
About that in the right.
For the right of way, to buy the right of way, it's $200 million, is that right, the number? So
Yeah, a little more than that.
this is really a problem, because this should have been built already. And if you heard, our first meeting on it was in 2015. I know when I was first elected, we got an unsolicited bid to double deck 54 from a Spanish transportation. Do you remember that? I mean, because I think people saw that that 54 is gonna be a problem. So I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that this is a regional issue. A lot of people in Hillsborough and some in Pinellas, they come north to go east-west to go south. And we have got to find the money for 5441 sooner rather than later. And Jack, I think it's part of our mission when we go to Washington. But we need everyone's support to help find the money to get this project rolling.
You guys have. in your back pocket.
I can assure you all. that
Can
we're-
you get it out, Brian?
It's the number one priority, you know, it's on the top, so.
Yeah, no,
We're doing everything we can. It's just, it's a big project. So we're gonna keep chipping away at it and hopefully, you know, we get an opportunity to fund it earlier than.
I thought maybe Ming had some.
I was gonna say, Ming brought some money, right? Ming, you got money?
I would have loved for the double decking by the Spanish firm, but.
The board of.
I was willing to listen. Were you at that meeting when I thought they were gonna throw tomatoes at us at the
Yes.
high school? Yeah. I was back.
Oh, no.
Anybody else?
It'll.
I think Julie and I wanted to just give a quick update.
Whit and I are gonna tag team to give you an update on some bills that we're tracking in the legislature. I'll start with HB 85, revises the criteria for defining a hazardous walking condition and allows an assessment of all facilities, including walkways along state highways, freeways, or expressways, and any entrance or exit ramp or interchange regardless of the posted speed limit. Senate Bill 462 is a DOT bill. It has a companion. I'll defer that to Whit. Sorry, I called you Whit in just a moment. It's a DOT bill. One of the notable provisions of that is that it would authorize the department to proactively acquire properties to preserve a corridor for future projects and would allow reimbursements of a certain percentage for the cost of relocating utilities when they do a project. And the companion is HB 567, so I'll keep that to Whit.
You said that's on rural roads. The utility relocation.
Did not read that, but
It's rural.
rural roads.
So just be aware, we're prohibited from spending federal and state dollars relocating utilities on most roads. This gives a real benefit to rural communities by providing that funding for utility relocation, which is a huge impediment to getting projects built. Because when you realize how much it costs to relocate utilities, that's all on locals and it stops projects dead. So when we can't say equity anymore, but this would be very much an equity for rural areas. And I guess that's okay now. House Bill 567 is a companion, as Johnny mentioned, and there are some MPO provisions in 567 you should pay attention to. I'll skip over the stuff that's compatible, but this would, let's see, after July 1st, 2025, no additional MPOs may be designated in the state in urban areas not contiguous to urban areas. So we already have 27. I think the legislature's mode is to have fewer. For long-range plans and transportation improvement programs, changes in the required strategy from promoting energy conservation to conserve natural resources and adding reduced traffic and congestion. I think we all try to reduce traffic and congestion anyway. It requires the long-range plan to support advanced air mobility, and St. Petersburg is initiating a task force on advanced air mobility. We should be consistent with that. It deletes the requirement for us to produce a feasibility report on merging, since we've already done that. It eliminates the MPO Advisory Council, so they would be no longer available to do training. And instead, that would be done by the state of Florida or by the Center for Urban Transportation Research. It changes the Center for Urban Transportation Research's board and eliminates the DEP designee and adds designee by the Speaker and the Senate President. It requires FDOT to prioritize projects that close gaps in the strategic intermodal system, so maybe that helps.
Yes.
Let's see, probably another important one is it requires FDOT by October 31st to revisit its district boundaries in response to growth and development. So we are kind of our region is part District 1, part District 7. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it on our end.
And our next meeting is May 16th.
Nope.
It's already been changed.
23rd.
Sorry, May 23rd. And we'll let you all know where, and assuming 9:30 again. We are done.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.